So you mentioned culture a number of times again there. So interesting enough, on this podcast, we've talked a lot about culture. In fact, I interviewed a gentleman who was a CISO, so Chief Security Officer. Literally, he said, Steve, the number one thing that I do when I come into a new company is I evaluate the culture of the team. It's the number one thing. And based on that, how can I create a team culture, grow, expand, keep what's good? But he said, that's the way I'm going to attract good people. That's the way people are going to work together. They're going to have the psychological safety of opening up and making suggestions and not worried because good ideas can come from everywhere. So this idea of culture, how important is that? This whole thing is about overcoming roadblocks. Company cultures can sometimes be that page on the website that says culture and values, and we write it, and then it's kind of like, yep, is culture something that's important enough that we need help to be managers of it, facilitators of it, and make it a part of our talent acquisition strategy?
Absolutely. I think talent acquisition often gets the AKA name as the cheerleaders of the company. They're the brand ambassadors. They're the ones that are out there doing that. But I think we have to do it with integrity, back to that earlier sentiment there. So we do have to be tapped into that culture. We can't go out there. I wouldn't want to sell anybody on something that I didn't feel was authentic and was good and would be good for them. So you have to, I think, really be a good barometer for what is that culture out there and what is that? I think even within an organization, exactly to your point, there's values, there's guiding principles, all of those things, the North Star that the company follows and we have as the common vernacular, if you will, within the company. But sometimes you get micro cultures that exist within teams that go in there within organizations. Maybe the marketing team has this culture and maybe this one has this one, because I think culture is not something that happens to you. It happens because of you. So it's the contributions that each person is making in there and what's permitted and what's not permitted. It's a very fluid concept. So I think the recruiter has to be able to speak to company principles, company values, things that the company values. Maybe it's the way they give back to the community or the way that they take care of their employees or things like that. But I think that goes to the earlier part of our conversation with that hiring manager, understanding their company or their team's culture. What does that look like? Are y'all a very tight-knit team that are doing things like this? Is this one where everybody likes to work in silos and doesn't like to work together? And the expectation is that you're an independent thinker and you don't come up for air. What are those different pieces and what does it feel like working within your team? So I think you have to not that I'm saying we're superheroes, but let me put my cape away. But it really is about being able to speak to the company, being able to speak to that role that you're hiring, what that culture feels like, what it looks like, and then being able to do it with integrity. And if you don't believe in your company's culture, then you shouldn't be a recruiter there. Nothing burns my biscuits more than seeing somebody that's like, oh, God, you don't want to work here. And I'm like, you should be the only one that's out there screaming from Mount Everest, like we talked about earlier, saying, this is why you should come here. And if you have to stop and think when somebody asks you the question, why do you stay there? What makes you show up on a Monday morning early? If you can't say those within 5 seconds, this isn't the right company for you. So as a recruiter, I think you have to take an internal stock of that. Is this where I want to be? Is this where I believe I should be? And then if all those things reign true, then gosh darn it, you should be out there selling that to candidates with authenticity because you believe it and you know it because you've asked, you've been part of it, and you've contributed to that overall culture.
So you've asked, you've been a part of it, you've contributed to it. If you don't, back to the roadblocks, what this podcast absolutely all about, guess what? You have become one of the biggest roadblocks.
Absolutely. You, my friend, are now that big stinky rock right in the middle of progress. Like, don't be that guy.